Hello, everybody. Surprise, surprise. We are not back in school today, which is honestly at this point to be expected. So, this is the video for Friday, January 21st. We're going to start off with the bell work over here. Write as many examples of credible sources as you can think of. So, go ahead and pause the video to do that. I'm really curious to see what you come up with as far as credible sources. Are you talking about really mainstream sources or maybe sort of off the beaten path sources? But however you would define credible sources, I want you to come up with a list and write them all in there. Okay. So pause the video and go ahead and do that. All right. So let's get started with this. Let's see. So the first one, we're actually looking at the Vatican women's rifle team. So I need to switch that there. So let's. It says, look at the picture of the Vatican women's rifle team. What red flags do you think that might lead you to believe that this picture is misleading? So pause the video and do that. And when you unpause, talk about it. All right, so here's the picture. We've got these women. They're holding the rifles, and basically, this is an example of misleading news because what you see is picture of these women who are dressed like nuns. Maybe they are nuns, but they don't have, but they're not the Vatican Women's Rifle Team as the story would suggest. So, what do you see when you look at this that might make you think that this is not true? For me, the first thing that jumps off the page is that these women look like they've never held a gun before in their lives. They're not holding the weapon with the level of mastery and proficiency you would expect of someone who is on the rifle team. Also, it's just a ridiculous idea that there is a rifle team to begin with. Also, when was this picture taken? This picture looks like it was taken in 1850. Like, it's old looking picture. Okay. So here in the PowerPoint is the right there. There you go. It's kind of backwards for me. Right there is the definition for misleading news. So if you want to pause the video to copy that, those are some things that you might see in this picture. If you see anything else, please go ahead and add it. But why that might be a little misleading, how you could know that before you ever did a Google search on the Vatican women's rifle team. All right, let's look at the next one. So look at the picture of Obama banning the Pledge of Allegiance. What red flags do you think that might lead you to believe that picture is false? So, okay, let's look at this. All right, so we've got the picture here. There's Obama. He's signing something, and the article says Obama signs executive order banning the Pledge of Allegiance in schools nationwide. So pause the video, answer the question, come up with anything that you might be able to point to that makes you think that that is not true. Okay. And copy the definition of fake news or hoax news up there. Which is news that is fabricated with the intention of misleading or confusing readers. Okay, so let's talk about this one for a second. This is obviously a real picture. Okay, if you're not paying attention, you might think this is a picture of Obama signing something, and it says he's signing the Pledge of Allegiance or the ban on the Pledge of Allegiance, and that's what it says right there. You can see it that he's clearly signing that. Okay, well, what are the things that might make you pump the brakes on this? One, hopefully you pump the brakes because we say the Pledge of Allegiance every day in school. Okay. There was not some time where we stopped saying the Pledge of Allegiance as that would have happened. Now, we haven't talked about the Constitution yet, but you also have the right to freedom of speech as in the First Amendment. Okay. So the president can't just sign an executive order that would do that. So there's a lot of things that would make this untrue. A couple other things that I might notice that hopefully you've noticed as well is that a real article doesn't call the president by the last name. Okay. sometimes we sort of colloquially will say Obama or Trump or Biden or Bush or Clinton or whoever. We'll just say it by their last name. But journalists, when they're writing an article like this, they would use the more formal title, President Obama signs executive order banning the Pledge of Allegiance in schools nationwide. Okay. So the fact that you see Obama just like that without the modifier of president there, that should give you some sort of pause as well. Okay. Other things. What else do you notice? Well, I notice that this story comes courtesy of ABC News. That's weird. Did ABC News run this article? I'm not sure. Well, let's look and see. Okay. What do we have here? The next question says, look at the two ABC News websites. What differences can you spot between the two that can help you determine which is a mimic site? So, sorry, these are all out of order for some reason. Here we go. Okay. So we've got our two ABC Newses here, and ABC News on the left, ABC News on the right. These are different. Okay. I've got circled a bunch of the reasons that they're different. On the one, it's abcnews.com. And then on the right, it says abcnews.go.com. Okay. So there we have a different link. Okay. The one on the left versus the one on the right. Which of those is the actual logo? Well, it's the one on the right. It's the one over here. It's the way that this one, it just looks kind of flat. This one looks kind of 3D. It fits in the circle differently. This one has like this white sort of shadow here. This one does not. Okay, so these are some of the differences between these two websites, and it's not unrealistic for me, as if I was trying to create some fake deceptive news, I could just create a website called abcnews.com and I could pretend to be ABC News. And this is what is sometimes really difficult for us, because I'm going to tell you that you should know the sources. I'm going to show you a chart later that shows the bias of all these different sources. And the problem is, once you start to get a hold of that bias and you start to know, okay, these are some of the credible websites, these are some of the less credible websites. Well, maybe you consider ABC News one of those credible websites. And if you do, and you see ABC News, you could just be tricked by that. So you have to be a ninja with this stuff. It can be really difficult, honestly, to navigate some of this stuff, because even if you look past even if you see through the realnewsnow.com, which was my made up example from yesterday, and you see it's ABC News, that's a real news agency website, all that. Well, what's to stop somebody from making a fake ABC News just to go one step past that for you? Okay. So that's something that you need to consider as well. Okay. So let's see. Oh, we have mimic websites. Sorry, there's the definition here. Fake news websites that mimic the look of trusted news sources in order to fool readers into thinking a story is real. Okay, so there's your definition for that one as well. Now, alternative facts. Alternative facts, we have a definition here, are a different interpretation of facts usually derived from a misinterpretation of reports or by focusing only on a subset of the available information. So maybe, for example, someone is misleading intentionally by only talking about certain parts of a story, right? Maybe there's context, maybe there's it's framed in a way that's just dishonest. And so I'm going to give you a couple examples of what you might actually see here. Okay. Skip that for now. All right. Have you seen this meme or a meme like it? Okay. In your notes, it says, let's see, we have to come all the way down here. Some of this is all out of order. I'm not sure what happened here. Just bear with me. It says, look at the meme on the board depicting, or in your notes, depicting Centoya Brown and Brock Turner. How is this meme trying to make you feel? What words or phrases can be used to identify bias? Spend 5 minutes researching the facts surrounding this meme and write your findings below. Okay, so that's what I want you to do right now. I want you to I want you to go ahead and answer these questions. So pause the video so you can do that. All right. Hopefully you spent some time researching that. Let's look and see what we have here. All right. So what do we have? We have on the left, we have this young girl, Centoya Brown. She was sentenced to 51 years for gaining the courage to kill the pedophile she was sold to after being sex trafficked as a 15-year-old. Okay. And then on the right, this is Brock Turner. He was sentenced to 6 months for raping and assaulting an intoxicated, unconscious woman. Now, how is this meme trying to make you feel? Okay. Before I even get into that, I'll talk about memes and the way that we consume memes. Memes are a very effective way of getting some sort of political message across, right? Memes don't usually convey news because you think that in both of these cases, there would be more information than they're able to put in this little tiny area. Okay. So, and if you did the research, like I asked you to do, pause the video, do the research, you know that. Okay. So it's more about getting you to feel a certain way and then use that feeling to extrapolate some sort of political behavior. Okay. Voting for a certain political party, donating money to a certain political party, or even just thinking that something is wrong with the way the system is, or whatever. Okay. So, how is this meme trying to make you feel? It's trying to make you feel angry. Okay. It's trying to make you feel like the world is unjust. It's trying to make you feel a call to action, okay, on her behalf, because this is not fair. And the implication here, and I've seen other versions of this meme where it says broken system or white privilege or whatever, where you look at this and basically it's trying to make you feel like the system is slanted in favor of men, of white people, of people with privilege, whatever it is, and goes extra hard on those who are not those things. Now, it's not my job to tell you what the system is or what the system is not, and I'm not going to even get into that. Okay. But if you did the research, you know that there's a little bit more to both of these stories than meets the eye initially. Okay, so what words or phrases can be used to identify bias? Hopefully, you've got a few of those. For me, I see over here she was sentenced to 51 years for gaining the courage. Okay, gaining the courage. That is bias. To kill the pedophile. Okay, well that is a word that has meaning and has connotation, and there might be bias there as well. So there's the picture. She looks scared. She looks innocent. For him, it's his mugshot. That's a different picture. Okay, so you see a lot of bias here before you even do any research. Now, if you did the research, you'll know a couple things. You'll know the circumstances around her situation where she was 15. I think she was 16 at the time that this event happened. She was an underage prostitute. After she and the John is what they call him. After they were done, he was asleep. She shot him in the back of the head, robbed him, and took his money and his truck back to her pimp. Okay, none of that's there. Now, based on what you see, since 51 years for gaining the courage to kill the pedophile she was sold to after being sex trafficked as a 15-year-old, is any of that a lie? It's really not, right? Technically, she was sold to this man. Technically, she was sex trafficked as a 15-year-old. But what the meme makes you think when you read it is, she was kidnapped and she was in the back of a van and she fought off the guy and killed him, and then she was sentenced to 51 years for it, is not what happened. I mean, if you read that, you did not get the impression that she shot him in the back of the head while he was asleep and then went back to her pimp. Okay. So that, without lying to you, is some bias. Okay. It's misleading because it's trying to make you think something happened that didn't happen. Now let's look at Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner was sentenced to 6 months for raping and assaulting an intoxicated, unconscious woman. Wow, that's crazy. Sentenced to 6 months for doing all that. Okay, well, what was he found guilty of? He wasn't found guilty of rape. He was found guilty of sexual assault. Now we can have conversations about whether all the things that she did should have gotten her 51 years, and the things that he was convicted of doing, because she was convicted as well, the things that he was convicted of doing should have gotten him more than that 6 months. That's a reasonable conversation. That's a policy conversation. That's a conversation that well-meaning and well-intentioned people can have. Maybe his sentence is too light. Maybe her sentence was too heavy. We can have that. But when there's all this propaganda around what she did and propaganda around what he did going in opposite directions, it makes you really think, okay, well, it's maybe not quite as true as I thought it was going to be. Okay. Let's do it again. Let's do it with this one. Maybe you've seen this meme. This is Mama Sai Mamakusa, a school principal in Richmond, Virginia. She has expelled 2 kids for wearing a crucifix around their necks, saying there is no place for religion at a school. How is this meme trying to make you feel? What words or phrases can be used to identify bias? And spend 2 minutes, really it's not going to take you that long, researching the facts surrounding this meme. Okay, so pause the video and go do that. Okay, so when I research this meme, all I do, let me even show you. I come over here into Google and I Google the principal's name, Mama Sai Mamakusa. Right here, first one, fact check. Hoax claims Richmond, Virginia principal expelled. Okay, so there's the fact check. Nope. Always the pop-ups. The claim is here, and fact checkers have debunked the hoax several times before, pointing out that the name references a Michael Jackson song lyric. Okay, not a real school principal, but the meme still persists. All right, so how is this meme trying to make you feel? What words and phrases can be used to identify bias? All right, so we'll go over this one a little more quickly. It's trying to make you feel like religion is under attack, specifically like Christianity is under attack, because it's not religion that's being under attack. She's wearing a hijab. A hijab is a traditional Muslim headdress for Muslim women, and so it's not attacking all religions. It's specifically attacking Christianity because the 2 boys were apparently expelled for wearing a crucifix, which is a cross necklace around their necks. Okay, so it's trying to make you feel like that. Now, what words or phrases can be used to identify bias? This one's all over the place. First of all, it's a stock image. You know what a stock image is. You know that if you Googled Muslim woman sitting in front of a laptop wearing a hijab, this is what you might get. And you can even see the watermarks there. Okay, because this is obviously not it's a stock image, something you just found on Google, right? Okay, what else? I mean, it's ridiculous on its face. Okay, it's a little less ridiculous if we go back to this meme to think that 2 people got sentences that were not appropriate based on their crimes. That's a little less ridiculous. We need to do some actual research into both of these cases in order to understand that. But when we go to this one, well, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous that her justification for expelling these 2 kids would say there's no place for religion at a school while she's wearing a traditional Muslim hijab. It's just patently ridiculous on its face. So I think you can sort of see that, and it doesn't take you long to Google that and then find out that it is a Mama Sai Mamakusa is a Michael Jackson lyric. Okay, doesn't quite take you doesn't take some internet detective to be able to do that. Okay. All right. Let's see. What have we missed? We've missed clickbait. So let's find the clickbait one here. All right, clickbait. Um, Clickbait is news that is promoted with dramatic or misleading headlines that do not reflect the content of the actual story. So people are obsessed with this and also freaked out by this video of Winnie the Pooh dancing, 11 random excuses for having your friends over, the classic "you won't believe what she looks like now" clickbait meme. And I'm actually a little sympathetic to clickbait, not in these kind of articles. I'm not really a fan of, obviously, of these. I don't want to click on these. But the reason clickbait exists is that if you are a website, any kind of website, news or otherwise, the way you make money is through website traffic, is through getting people to click on your website. And so if you just have the article titles, someone's scrolling through Facebook and you see the title of an article, and that article gives you enough information where it says, such and such politician said this, then you could be like, oh, that politician said that, and you can keep moving. But if they want you to click on it, they have to not give up the info in the title. So they have to say something like, this politician, you won't believe what this politician said, or the political world reacts to what so and so said. And then you're like, whoa, what did they say? Now I need to know. And you're not even that interested in what the political world's reaction was. You're more interested in what they said. And then when you click on it, a lot of times it's just some innocuous thing, and you're like, okay, well, I just move on with my life. But they need to get you to click on it, right? So you, as the consumer, you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware that that's where that's how they make their money, is by selling advertisements on the page that you click on. Okay, so you have to be aware of that. What else? When have you seen some examples of clickbait headlines, and why do you think a website would want to give you a clickbait headline? So I actually kind of already gave you the second answer there. Go ahead and pause the video to answer that first one, and then we'll move on. Okay, so kind of going all over the place today. That's fine. Last thing I want to talk about is satire. Satire is fake and ironic news stories that are intended to be funny or entertaining. So in these cases, it's not necessarily, the satire is not necessarily about trying to mislead you, right? They're fake news. Okay, it looks like a news story sometimes, but it's not real. Okay, it's not it's not, but it's not trying to make you think that it's real, right? We looked at some examples earlier, like the Vatican women's rifle team and Obama banning the Pledge of Allegiance, where the authors of the article wanted you to believe something that wasn't true. The Onion, which is an example of a satire website, they're not trying to make you believe it, but they're trying to make fun of the actual news, or they're trying to make fun of some person, or make fun of some news website. There's a lot of different ways that could be happening. Okay. Now, the best way to not be fooled by satire is, one, to have a sense of humor, and two, to understand and know what's going on in the news. Because in order to identify it as satire, you have to be able to understand the satire, and you're only able to do that if you know what's actually happening in the world. Okay, so it's a good idea to know some of the most common satire websites. The most common ones are the Onion and also the Babylon Bee. So those are the two that pop up the most. The Onion is maybe more of a center left satire website, and the Babylon Bee is more of a center right satire website. So let me find an example for you. I'm going to pause my video here so that I can go find an example for you. All right, I have found an example of satire. So this is from the Babylon Bee. I said this one is probably center right, but they make fun of people on both sides of the aisle. And the reason I like this particular post is because they're making fun of people on both sides of the aisle with this post. Okay. So the post says Ted Cruz says all his haters are just unable to resist his raw sex appeal. So what does that mean? Okay. Well, it's in order to understand why this is funny, you have to be following along with the news. Now, you may or may not have noticed, seen recently in the news, that Democratic Congresswoman from Brooklyn, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, went to Florida and she was criticized, and people made fun of her boyfriend wearing sandals and all that. So, after that criticism, here, let me. Okay, so it was this. Here was the picture. Somebody who I don't even know who this is says if leftists like AOC actually thought mandates and masking work, they wouldn't be frolicking, in free Florida. Number two, her guy is shooting his gross pale male feet in public, not at a pool or beach with hideous sandals. 0 for 2. And so what her response was, if Republicans are mad, they can't date me. They can just say that instead of projecting their sexual frustrations onto my boyfriend's feet, you creepy weirdos. Okay, so let's get back to this. This particular meme is making fun of both of them. Now, it's not real news. It's not fake news. Ted Cruz didn't actually say this, but it's making fun of Ted Cruz because he gets a lot of hate. A lot of people, especially on the left, hate him. And it's also making fun of her from talking about that if Republicans don't like her, it's just because they want to date her, and talking about her own, that they can't date her. They're just projecting their sexual frustration onto her boyfriend's feet. So all of that combined to have this post. Now, if you didn't know any of that and you saw this, you might just be confused by it. Okay. So in order for satire to be funny, you have to have a sense of humor, and you have to follow along with the news enough so that when I saw this, I knew about that story, and I was able to understand it. Okay. So let's jump out of there, and let's get out of there, and let's get out of there. We'll do that later. Okay. So that is satire. Also, satire is Saturday Night Live. If you watch Saturday Night Live, and they're imitating, they have impressions of different politicians. That would be satire as well, because they're exaggerating those things about the politicians and making fun of them basically in that way. Okay. And it's meant to be humorous. Okay. So let's see. Got another question here. Think about the statement, everyone and everything has bias. Do you agree with this statement? Why do you think it's important to be able to identify bias in the news and media? Pause the video to answer that question. So for me, I think that the statement is true because people are the ones who are creating the news. Okay. And if people are creating the news, people are human. Humans have bias. And that's understandable. I understand that, as should you. For me, I think that the more destructive and dangerous thing here is when somebody doesn't admit their bias. I would rather have somebody tell me I have a right-wing bias, I have a left-wing bias, and this is my perspective, and this is what I think of what's happening, than having somebody say, oh, I don't have a bias, this is what's happening. Because, well, I know that's not true. I know you do have a bias, and it's okay with me that you have that bias. I just want you to be forthcoming about that. Now, for me personally, my role, I'm not a news person. If I was, I would be open to my biases. I am your government teacher. And so I do have my biases, and I will do my very best to leave those biases at the door, not bring them into the class. I will play devil's advocate on a lot of the things that we might talk about over the course of this class. And when I do, sometimes I'm going to be saying things that I don't believe. And hopefully I'm not allowing my own bias to seep in. Okay. But for a news agency, I think it's kind of silly when they pretend that they don't have bias. So we're going to look at some of those news agencies today. We've got the media chart here. These things are all out of order. We've got the media chart here. You can see on the media chart where everything is. The more to the left over here, you will see more left-wing bias, and over to the right, you will see more right-wing bias. And you will also see quality from top to bottom. So the higher up, it's more facts, facts, facts. The more down, it's more opinion. And then below this middle line, we get from opinion to unfair persuasion, like that sort of thing. I have some issues with some of the way this chart is done, some of the things that you see here. But I think some things are, I think it's a generally good jumping off point. A few things to look at. You might notice that there is more over here on the left than there is on the right. And that is because journalism is an inherently left-wing profession, because it involves questioning authority and power, and that's generally a left-wing value more so than it is a right-wing value. So it makes sense that there's going to be a lot more left-wing there than right-wing. So also what I notice is that most of the more legacy, I guess, news media is more over on the left. On the left, I see CNN, I see the Huffington Post, I see MSNBC, I see the Washington Post, the New York Times, Axios, Political, NPR, BBC, NBC News, ABC News, AP. Like I see all those. And on the right, okay, well, there's CBS News, PBS, The Hill, New York Post, Fox News. Like those are the big ones. Now, I'm still going to take issue with some of this. ABC News, their big anchor, George Stephanopoulos, was the press secretary in the Clinton administration. Okay, he worked for Bill Clinton. So to say that ABC News is kind of right down the middle seems a little inaccurate to me. The CBS News, 60 Minutes, their big flagship program, is, I think, reasonably middle of the road a lot of the times. But recently they were running what I thought was a dishonest hit piece on Republican Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida. So I think that all of these things are kind of constantly shifting. Since 2016, I feel like they've both kind of gone in their separate directions. There's a lot less, it used to be a little more clumped together, and they've kind of gone separately. But I don't watch a lot of cable news, and so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask about this. But I do turn on enough Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC to see that they're the same. It's the same channel, right? It's doing the exact same thing, except on opposite ends. And this chart has Fox News further over to the right than they have MSNBC or CNN. And they also have them further down in the unfair propaganda area. Okay. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of just that. Okay. So, and this is to prove my point that CNN is they almost have CNN right in the middle of the chart. CNN's like over here by themselves. Okay. So I'm going to prove to you a couple examples of CNN's bias that I've found recently. Okay. Let's see. Stop the webcam. Okay. So let's look at, these are examples of bias. Fact check. Trump Jr. claims China wants Biden to win. Here are the facts. This is from CNN. This is a CNN fact check. They're not saying their opinion here. Apparently, they're saying whether or not what Donald Trump Jr. said was factual. Donald Trump Jr. referenced a report from the U.S. intelligence community in claiming that China preferred Biden for the presidency because he would weaken the U.S. economy. Quote: Beijing Biden is so weak on China that that the intelligence community recently assessed that the Chinese Communist Party favors Biden. They know he'll weaken us both economically and on a world stage. All right, so here's their fact check. While Trump Jr. might be asserting his opinion here, his characterization of a recent assessment from the U.S. intelligence community is misleading. The U.S. intelligence community did not determine that China preferred Biden because he would economically or otherwise weaken the U.S. Rather, it outlined that China, sorry, you can't see, that China preferred that President Donald Trump lose the election because he was unpredictable, and because of the many actions he has taken against China. Okay, so what CNN is saying here, and I'm sorry to pick on CNN. Oh, what happened? Okay, what CNN is saying here is that when Trump Jr. said that China wants Biden to win, that's not true. What is true is that China wants Trump to lose. Okay, this is August of 2020. We had two choices. Okay, unless you were one of the 10 people in the US voting for a third party, maybe you voted for Kanye, I don't know. But everybody voted for Trump or Biden. Those were your choices. And so him saying that they want Biden to win is a factually accurate statement. What CNN did is they said, no, they don't want Biden to win. They just want Trump to lose. Well, CNN is smart enough to know that those are the two choices. Okay, so it's misleading to say the least. Let's look one more at CNN. This one I think takes the cake. It says, Kenosha, Wisconsin, fiery but mostly peaceful protests after police shooting. I think is just what it says. Yeah, after police shooting. Okay. This one's dripping with bias, and actually CNN got made fun of mercilessly for this one. Fiery but mostly peaceful protests. I mean, does that look like a peaceful protest to you? They're so married to their narrative that these protests were peaceful that they wanted to write mostly peaceful protest, but their reporter is wearing a gas mask, around his neck, but still wearing a gas mask, and standing in front of what looks like Baghdad. Okay, that looks like a war zone. Everything's on fire. And so someone posted on this is called the Chiron right here. Somebody posted on the Chiron, fiery but mostly peaceful protests. Okay, so CNN has bias. Now, if you ask me, I personally would prefer MSNBC or Fox News to CNN. And the reason is because MSNBC and Fox News, one hyperpartisan left and one hyperpartisan right, are both much more upfront about their bias than CNN is. CNN says the most trusted name in news. CNN is trying to make you think that they don't have a bias when it's clear that they do. Okay, so I think that's fairly clear. And I don't mean to pick on CNN, but it's really just to show that this chart, well, is maybe a good jumping off point to start understanding it. This chart puts CNN right in the middle. Okay, they put them mostly in neutral, maybe a little bit skews liberal over there, and right in the middle here, maybe there's some opinion. It's fair persuasion, okay, but it's it's in the middle of the spectrum. And all I'm saying is we need to take every single one of these things with a grain of salt, because maybe today it is in the middle. It's not, but maybe we'll say one day it is. They could get a new producer and decide that they're going in an entirely different direction. So you always have to be aware of that. And then we've got some of this stuff here. Sorry, this is all over the place. I'm really sorry about that, about the order of all this. We talk about the CNN fact check. So there's an example of bias, so you can read through that. And then look at the CNN screen grab. How is that an example of bias? I talked about both of those. I gave you the definition of satire. And then what is the difference between satire and misinformation? you can look through that as well. I think we have fully gone over all of this. Um, so yeah, all right, we'll stop it there. You guys, really sorry about not being able to be in school this week. I wish we could. Um, Unfortunately, we have to do all this stuff virtually. Maybe we'll talk about some of this on Monday when we get into class. But I'm looking forward to meeting you, and thank you for bearing with me through the end of this video. I'll see you Monday.